Anyway, why should I give thanks on Thanksgiving? What have I got to be thankful for? All it does is make more work for us at school.
You may know her as the voice behind Sally Brown in Peanuts, but Hilary Momberger-Powers, today's guest on Grieving Out Loud, had been in dozens of commercials by the time she was 11.
I did doll voices, Mattel, Tiny Tears, Hi Dottie, Baby Beans. Remember the Pulling the String?
Yeah, I do.
Like Hanna-Barbera, and I did some specials. I was Buddy Greco's favorite.
So
ballet.
you're saying you were the voice in my doll that I had when I pulled that
Yeah,
string and
right.
it talked to me. That was you, and I get to meet you now. That's kind of crazy. Yeah. But behind those voices was a young girl struggling with the voices in her head and the ones that she couldn't escape at home.
I felt a pressure, even at a very young age, to perform because my mother would throw comments saying, your brothers and sisters are going to starve if you don't make this commercial. You going to make it? So I had this underlining, like I was in terror. That's where my trauma started.
That trauma led Hilary down a dangerous path of alcohol, drug abuse, and homelessness at a very young age. In this episode of Grieving Out Loud, Hilary bravely shares her story, what helped her heal and find recovery, and the advice she has for others.
No matter what you go through, you are not what you've done. That regardless of what happens, hope is just around the corner. And you can reinvent yourself with a thought. That's all I have to do, is I have to allow myself to dream, which, when you're depressed, you stop dreaming.
Today's guest has one of the most fascinating and inspiring stories you'll ever hear. You may not recognize her face, but you've definitely heard her voice. At just 5 years old, Hilary Momberger-Powers became Sally Brown in the Charlie Brown and Peanuts cartoons. Yes, the one calling out to her brother, "You blockhead, Charlie Brown." But while Hilary grew up in the bright lights of Hollywood, her real story unfolded off camera. Behind the success was a childhood filled with pain, trauma, and the complicated love of a narcissistic mother. Through decades of recovery, therapy, and deep faith, Hilary transformed her pain into purpose, healing from addiction, grief, and emotional wounds to help others do the same. She's now a life coach and an inspirational speaker and the author of the upcoming memoir, Peanuts to Percocet: Notes on a Hollywood Childhood. Today, Hilary opens up about what it means to no longer lead with your wounds and how she found redemption after years in the spotlight and the shadows. Stay with us. You're about to meet the woman behind Sally Brown's voice, whose real life story is even more powerful than anything in the movies. Hilary, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I really appreciate you allowing me to add and be of service to your platform. I appreciate you. Thank you.
Well, I grew up, of course, the Peanuts specials were everything when I was a kid. And actually, Peanuts was the favorite of my daughter, Emily, who died from fentanyl poisoning. So I have a little connection with you there.
I'm so sorry for your loss. It's interesting. I don't even know where to start. I'm so grateful I am sober. Thank you, God. I too I have family members who have passed as a result of their addiction. So, staying sober and sharing a message of hope to other people, either if you're in Al-Anon or AA or any kind of therapy whatsoever, that life changes, and so can you, and you can heal those wounds.
Hilary would know. She says her emotional wounds started at a young age when her mother pushed her into Hollywood, a path Hilary didn't want but felt pressured to follow. I do want to ask you about being in Hollywood, and it's such a young age. You started, working in the industry. And this is a story we hear over and over again about childhood stars, so to speak, people who start in the industry falling into a lot of trouble in their lives. And if you could kind of set up what it was like for you when you were doing these voiceovers and doing the work in Hollywood, and how you kind of got into that, and why so many people who go down that road as a childhood star end up having a lot of issues in their lives, including addiction.
Well, is it the chicken or the egg? I don't know. Is it because my mother was an alcoholic and there was alcoholism, or was it because I was exposed to a world where I had to pretend I was somebody else all the time? I don't know. As a child, I had a mother who was a Jackie Gleason girl, if you know who they were. She used to introduce, and here's Jackie. And, being a narcissist and having to give up your career because you have all these children, she needed to turn her narcissism into something that was going to glorify her. So she had this great idea that she was going to take the kids down to Hollywood and make us famous so she could vicariously live through us. And she even said that. She said, if I can't have a career, I'm going to make you have a career.
Huh.
And she would constantly say to me, you are nothing without me. So, when you grow up in this dysfunction, I was born happy, joyous, and free. I was a child. And then I was placed in a position, some people think it's lucky, but for me, I was placed in a position where I had to earn love on a constant basis. And I don't know if that happens in other families that are expose their children to any type of fame or putting them on the front line to put a happy face on all the time. But I grew up having to smile, look cute, and I was reminded at all costs, showing emotions was not profitable.
It's so interesting because you didn't choose that life. You didn't choose to go into acting. I mean, now you choose it as an adult, but you didn't choose that, and it was really thrust upon you. And I think kids will often say, "Yes, I want to do this to please their parents," right?
Yeah. I mean, a lot of times I talk to parents and they say, "Oh, my kid really wants to be an actor." And I said, does he really want to be an actor? Like, have you really sat down and had that conversation with them? And they just like make believe and play. And
Mhm.
what child doesn't like to pretend they're cowboys and Indians and building forts and being a Barbie model there's nothing wrong with the encouraging and expanding a child's creativity and their imagination. And as a kid, it's fun. I had brothers and sisters. We would make forts. We would pretend we were holding court in the backyard. And, I suggest the parents to enroll them in an art class or put them in a drama class so they can express their creativity. And a lot of parents, they vicariously live through their children. Maybe they didn't do well, so they think they can put the forefront, and their child can be that face.
Yeah.
And
It happens, and it happens a lot with sports too. Are you ready to protect the next generation from the dangers of substance use? Emily's Hope has created a comprehensive K through 12 substance use prevention curriculum designed to educate, empower, and equip students with the tools they need to make healthy choices. Our age-appropriate lessons start in kindergarten and build through high school, using science, real stories, and interactive learning to help kids understand their bodies, brains, and risk of drug use. We're already reaching thousands of students across multiple states, and we're just getting started. Visit emilyshopeedu.org to learn more and share our curriculum with your school administrators and counselors. At Emily's Hope, we believe prevention begins with education. Let's work together to keep our kids safe. Paint a picture for me of what life was like for you as a kid doing these voiceovers for Charlie Brown, Peanuts, and what your life was like and what the world was like, or how what you saw maybe at a young age or experience that other kids don't.
Well, so my mom put us in a car and we went down to Hollywood. And my first audition, I looked like Shirley Temple. So I was that kid and I always had the spit curls and, hated them. And, we had a very pretty on the outside family. So we looked like everything was okay, which is kind of like our demographic today. We want to look good, but don't want to do good. It's almost like, if you think I'm doing okay, then I think I might be doing okay. I mean, I call that the funnel on backwards. I live from the outside in, but I'm actually living from the inside out. But so anyways, my mother takes us down and I get my first job and I met Charles Schultz and I met Bill Melendez. And it was just like a hi. And that was it. At the time, the Peanuts had all the characters, but they needed Sally. All the kids that were in Charlie Brown and, Linus, they were all local kids from Bill Melendez and Charlie Brown's neighborhood. And the only one they couldn't get was Sally, because the first Christmas they used a girl, and then her parents said, I don't want my kid doing this. So I got interviewed and I booked the job. And it was a little surreal because my mother was super excited because we were going to get money. And we had 7 children. We had a truckload of kids. And my mother used to always say, your father can't afford all you kids. So I felt a pressure, even at a very young age, to perform because my mother would throw comments saying, your brothers and sisters are going to starve if you don't make this commercial. You going to make it? So I had this underlining, like I was in terror. That's where my trauma started. Not only because my mother was drinking around the clock and there was a lot of violence and that comes with alcoholism, but I felt an overwhelming pressure to take care of my family, which started a characteristic that I brought into my adulthood, into my teens. I became, in trauma, I talk a lot about trauma because I coach a lot of women who have gone through trauma. There's 3 types of personalities you take on. And I call that the triangle of trauma. You become the people pleaser, the loner, or the controller. Or being so young as a child, I just want to make mom happy. I want to make sure everyone's okay. So I start building this character in my, live or die. Everyone's going to live. Everyone's going to die. If I don't do this, I'm in this overwhelming trauma. Even as a kid, I don't even know what it is. All I know is I've got blisters on my hands. I bite my fingernails. And, there had been a couple times where I remember I did a lot of commercials. There were 4 TV channels when I'm 63. So there were like 4 TV channels. So I was on TV all the time because I would book these commercials. And I didn't want to be noticed. I just wanted to be a kid. But I had this overwhelming urge to take care of my family. So, that set up an addictive personality because I would see my mother, her unsatisfiable ego being a narcissist and an alcoholic. And here is my ego being built going, I got to do more. I got to do more. I got to make everyone happy. So this is at 5 and 6 years old. I'm already building a character based on fear.
Wow, so young, so young. And I think trauma and grief both are behind most substance use disorders from everybody I've talked to in this world in the last 7 years. It seems to be a common theme, and people's traumas are different, right? So what could be trauma for one person may not be trauma for another. But were you exposed to substances then at a young age? Because you talk about you're at 5 or 6, you already are kind of developing this addictive type of personality.
Right. Well, I remember my mother used to get up and in the morning she would yell because I knew, oh God, she's hungover. But see, when you grow up in a family of alcoholism or even addiction or whatever it be, shopping or hoarding or porn, whatever it is, when there is a dis-ease, there's so much dis-ease in your ecosystem, you start putting up a face. So you start putting the mask. Everything's fine. My family's great. Yeah, my mom's kind of crazy. But you don't want to be different from your friends, because I'm trying so hard to identify, especially when you're a child, you're trying to find out where you fit in anyways. So by being different, you kind of step out of that circle of friends. So when my friends would say, "Is that you on the commercial?" I go, "Oh, no, 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 that's my sister."
Oh,
Because I didn't want to be different. And my mother would get up in the morning and she would yell, "Hilary, get my coffee." Immediately I would wake up and I go, "Oh my God, I got to do it perfectly because she'll be mad." So now I start setting up perfectionism. I don't even know I'm doing this. All I know is I want to please mommy. I want to make mom okay. I know she's hungover. I got to make sure she's okay. And I'm not the only one in the family who took on these characteristics, but I'm the one who's looking at them. I have other brothers and sisters that, they've gone on, like you said, you have other children. They seem to not be affected. So it doesn't matter if you're in a pool of some kind of addiction or mental health. One or two may not even bother. It may not even bother them.
and everybody has a different perspective growing up. Even in the same family, you can have 2, 3 people with very different perspectives of what that experience was like.
Right, right. Yeah. My brothers are just like, they've had normal, healthy lives. I seem to be a little bit more colorful. I'll call myself colorful because I've got a lot of feelings and emotions, and I've learned through recovery and therapy to get into the gray zone, which means I'm not in the fight or flight on a daily basis. I've learned how to stabilize myself. I have ways to do it. I show people how to do it because I can't go to a therapist or go to an AA meeting or call my friend at 2:00 in the morning. Where do I go? I've learned how to calm down. And as a kid, it was always tense. So it was always in a performance mode. Do you love me now? Do you love me now?
So there was alcohol in the home, obviously, with your mother's drinking
Yeah.
and your dad and also drank. But tell me about when you were first introduced to substances and what the substance was.
Well, I remember saying as a kid, I'll never be like my mother. I hate alcohol. I was to call my mother, her nickname was Satan. I mean, she was just ruthless. I mean, the craziness that went on behind closed doors was insanity. And there was just, you didn't talk about it back then, you know?
Right, right. Families really, I mean, I think social media, people are hiding a little bit of reality behind their lives, right? But back then, when there was a dysfunction, alcoholism, abuse, or whatever in the home, people didn't talk about it. I mean, people go on
Oh,
reality shows now or whatever, they talk about it on talk shows, and that didn't happen back when we were young.
no, I mean, the outcome is the same on both. When you keep it a secret, you get sicker. When you keep talking about the problem, it gets bigger.
Hmm.
So it's kind of interesting that polar, that's the trauma bend. Either it's secret or you keep talking about it, that you keep traumatizing yourself over and
Right,
over and over.
right.
What you talk about, you bring about.
And so you weren't gonna become an alcoholic. You weren't gonna become
Oh,
like
oh
your mother.
no, I was going to be different. I'm
Mhm.
going to be different. I was, and so I had spent my whole childhood being the people pleaser, trying to be okay. Am I okay now? Am I going to live? Am I going to die? Is she going to be happy? And once I realized at 11 years old, when my mother, um, I was doing commercials. I'd probably done 50 commercials. I did doll voices for Mattel, Tiny Tears, Hi Dottie, Baby Beans. Remember the pulling the string? Yeah.
Yeah, I do.
Like Hanna-Barbera. And I did some specials. I was Buddy Greco's favorite
So
ballet.
you're saying you were the voice in my doll that I had when I pulled that
Yeah,
string and it would talk to me. That was you, and I get to meet you now. That's kind of Crazy. Yeah.
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 So I did all this stuff, and then I start changing. When you get older, your voice changes, and you get into an awkward state. And now I'm not profitable to my mother. So that's when I became a pain in the ass. And then she decided at 11 that maybe she would take me to do porn. This is the insanity.
Can you repeat that again, please?
Yeah. Yeah. She said, maybe what we should do is we should start doing you in porn. And I didn't even know what that was. All I knew was, oh my God, I got to get out of here. So good girl turned bad. Now the trauma is no longer a people pleaser. I become a loner. I start using drugs and alcohol.
At just 11, Hilary refused her mom's suggestion to start doing porn. Her focus quickly shifted to surviving and escaping her situation at home.
That's when Hilary became disappearing. I would disappear. I would run away. And like I said, good girl turned bad. All I knew is I had to get out of this house.
And so, who introduced you to drugs and alcohol? How were they available to you at such a young age?
When you're a kid, and I had 2 older sisters, so I wanted to be like them, and they started drinking. And my mother would have parties all at night, and we would go take drinks and take it. Now, I didn't want to drink and do drugs to feel good. Like people talk about it, I took it and I felt like, oh, this is wonderful. I wanted to drink. When I started drinking, I didn't feel, and that was my goal.
Numbing. And how old were you?
I was 13.
13.
12 and 13, yeah.
And did you progress beyond alcohol then?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it was like, it's like the cup overfloweth. It's like when you take a bite of a chocolate chip and you're like, why not I can have like 10 chocolate chip cookies. And then it becomes, I realized that no matter what I did, I was not satisfied. So as much as I didn't want to be like my mother, I realized, oh my God, I'm becoming like my mother. And by the time I was 12 and 13, I was running away from home. I got arrested for assault and battery from my mother. I hit her back because I got tired of being beaten. And she sent me to juvenile hall at 14, 15. And I was living up in Lake Arrowhead. I told her I didn't want to do commercials anymore. I didn't want to do anything. I just wanted to be a kid. And she started taking me back and forth to my mom's, to my dad's, to my mother's, back and forth because my parents were breaking up. My mother had met a guy who was a chemist who brought crystal meth into California in 1973. He was a cooker. So my father was West Point, which everything was very strict. And now I've got this stepdad who everything's rose-colored glasses. It was in the 70s, and it was wild. And, my mother had stopped drinking while she met him. And remember, I was telling my sisters, I'm like, wait till they find out she's an alcoholic. Because everything was different. She's bad, I'm good, even though I'm acting out. And I'm stealing cars and I'm getting, arrested for robbery and, but at least I'm doing it. No one's controlling me. I'm in control of my failures. And even though I thought my mother was trying to control my failures, at least I can do it. So it's just like psychologically, I'm thinking, at least it's my life. I can do whatever I want, which is the addict saying. I'm not hurting anybody, even though I'm affecting everybody in my life. But I ended up going to juvenile hall. When I got out of juvenile hall, they said you can either go home or to a foster home. And I went to a foster home. And from there was sexual inappropriateness, and I left there. And I lived on the streets when I was 15, 16 years old. Lived in a warehouse in Compton, North Long Beach, and, sold pots and pans on the side of the highway. And I left my beginning life behind. I never told anybody anything I had done because I felt like a failure. And I went back to keeping the secret. Everything's okay. No one will know.
But Hillary's situation continued to get worse. She was homeless, struggling with her mental health, and was abusing substances, everything from alcohol to LSD and heroin.
I dropped out of high school. I went to 9 high schools, and I was living at a warehouse in Long Beach where we were allowed to sleep in the back if we were gone by 6 a.m. So we put a mattress. I had a boyfriend. I always thought he was going to rescue me. We have this illusion. Thank you, Disney. Knight in shining armor, and we're going to be happily forever. And he was also a drug addict. And one of the women who ran this business that I was able to sleep at, she said to me, and this is the first I call them a lot of little angels that you meet along the way, those little tidbits of like a little fairy dust gets sprinkled on you. She said, "You're so smart. What are you going to do with that brain of yours?" And I hadn't heard a compliment in a long, long time. I mean, I grew up in a family where there was no "I love you, you're a good girl, I'm so proud of you," and hug and kiss. That was very foreign to me. So this woman acknowledging that I wasn't an idiot, because I heard that all growing up. And, my mother being a narcissist saying, you'll never be as pretty as me, as smart as me. She's so sick inside that she's just vomiting all over everybody. Today, it sounds crazy, but I don't have any animosity for my mother. I actually love my mother.
I was going to ask, is your mother still alive?
No, my mother died homeless due to her alcoholism.
So I think that's also, you're talking about abuse. And I think that's very complicated grief when your abuser dies. And I want to get into how you got into recovery, but I
Right.
also think it's interesting to me that you can say that you don't hold animosity towards your mom. And I don't know how you got to that point.
Yeah, that's definitely a choice. But I'll share. So I ended up lying to get into a little medical college because I thought if I saved people, people will save me in return. So there goes that people pleasing. I need to take care of people, and in return, that maybe they'll take care of me. I don't know I'm doing this, but when you're a codependent and you're trying to fix somebody, I'm not doing it for fun and for free. I'm doing it because I want you in return to take care of me. And so I ended up lying to get into this little nursing college. I told him growing up as an actor and growing up in survival, you learn to do whatever it takes to get your needs met. So I became a great liar, a great manipulator. I'm going to figure it out because I have to. When you're in that trauma feeling, you got to take care of yourself. So you'll do whatever it takes to survive. So I ended up getting in this nursing college, and I got my LVN license, and I went and worked at doctor's office. So it got me out of living homeless. I got an apartment. I got, it was stepping stones.
How were you able to get through nursing school were you no longer using?
Oh, no, I'd use. I would just do it on the weekends or halfway through the week. And I remember I was living with my boyfriend, and I'd gotten beaten up by him because you pick partners that abuse you, because I'm abusing me. So I don't really feel worth of anything. And one of the girls said, "He hit you, didn't you? Didn't he?" And I said, "Oh, no, 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 I fell." All of a sudden, it clicked on me. I'm exactly like my mother. My mother would get beaten up by my stepfather, my father. And there was a lie behind a lie behind a lie. And by this time, I realized that I was no different than my mother, but I couldn't stop my train. I was already in the alcoholism. I had already created this character that I couldn't deal with anything. I couldn't deal with life on life's terms because I couldn't figure it out. I thought that I was in purgatory. I thought God hated me. I thought that I had done something wrong, that this was my life. And I was just going to probably one day, I didn't think I'd make it to 25. I didn't care. I had so much self-hate. And at this time I I was a bulimic also. I couldn't keep any food. It was just like I was stuffing anything to just fill that void, that hole. I was so empty and so sad inside. I just felt like a complete failure.
So, what changed?
By the time I was 21, I overdosed. I was starting to overdose, and I was living in Venice.
And I think we have to remember when you say overdose, we're not talking about today's drugs where overdose is an instant death sentence.
Right. I mean, we didn't have fentanyl then, but I overdosed on, I was taking downers and doing smoking coke, and I went into a grand mal seizure, and I was on a fire escape. And I looked up and I said, if there is God, please don't let me die. It was in that instant that I realized I didn't want to die, but I didn't know how to live. And my grandma's seizures stopped. And I would love to say that I went like, oh my God, now I'm saved. But that just gave me some reprieve for me to feel the life that I had created based on where I came from. And I didn't know how to get out of it. And I ended up getting sober at 21. A friend of mine, I'd met him previously. He was on the corner in Venice, and I was walking down the street. It was after another overdose on Valium. I had taken 100 Valium, and my friend came over and gave me Epitech, and I threw it up. And, I was thinking, how am I going to, I don't know how to do this life thing. I don't know what to do with myself. And I ran into him on the corner, my another little angel that showed up, and he said, oh my God, you look horrible. Come to an AA meeting with me. And I thought, what is that? He said, just come with me. And my mind said, I want to be your boyfriend. We're going to live happily ever after. And that's how crazy my thoughts are. And I didn't see him for a year, and I got into the herd of Alcoholics Anonymous.
Well, it just strikes me 8 years of use while your brain was developing, and you stop at 21 before your brain is even fully developed. You were able to stop because of AA?
Yeah, I have to say, I stopped because of God, a power greater than me. Because if it were up to me, I just wanted to die. I mean, I had suicide attempts. I had slit my wrist, and when I was 14, and I didn't know how to get out of this.
Have you lost a loved one to overdose or fentanyl poisoning? I'd like to invite you to share their story on our new Emily's Hope Memorial website called More Than Just a Number. They were our children, siblings, cousins, husbands, wives, aunts, uncles, and friends. So much more than just a number. You can submit a memorial today on morethanjustanumber.org.
If you or someone you love is struggling with substance use disorder or other mental health problems, please don't wait to get help. We have a list of helpful resources on our website for you, emilyshope.charity. Addiction is a disease, and for most people, willpower alone simply isn't enough. And that's okay. There's no shame in asking for help and reaching out for support. Help is out there, recovery is possible, and you deserve it.
I stayed sober for a very long time. I got loaded again after 10 years, and then I got right back in. Like a day.
You relapsed.
I relapsed, which is, people think you're supposed to, you get sober and that's it. I mean, it's very rare, and there are a lot of people that do, but addiction is a one day at a time thing. In our literature, in our AA literature, it doesn't talk about collecting chips. We do that to encourage people. It's about learning how to live in the day that you're in with this mind-powered disease that tells you don't live here.
Is there anything else besides AA that you felt was really helpful for you to, and I can tell just by the way you talk that you've really gone through your life. I'm sure you've had a lot of therapy to go
Tons.
back and to analyze these things and to see how you got to where you are today and how you the difficult times that you went through. But what else has really helped you um, become whole? I think that's the best way I could describe it is to become whole because anybody suffering from substance use disorder is not a wholly function human being, right? And with all the abuse and all the things that you went through, um, really creates a fractured person.
Mhm.
And today, from just talking to you, I can tell that you are a whole person. So, what has helped you the most?
I'd love to say it's one thing. It's like when you make a soup, you can't just use one ingredients. There's a whole in that cauldron, you have a whole bunch of stuff, and a part of the disease is I want everything in a hurry. I'm like a little child. You talked about that stunting the growth. Well, when drugs and alcohol are introduced at such a young age, even nicotine, you see
Mhm.
these kids vaping, your brain stops because your body goes, whoa, what's going on here? Let's suss this out. And so that natural maturation becomes stunted. And so I got sober at 21 years old and I was like a 13-year-old. Like literally, I was acting the part. I knew how to get a job. I knew how to book a job. 5 years old, my brain was already geared into go get it, get it, get it, get it. So when you're an addict, I switched that go get that job to get my needs met. May it get loaded, may it be the boy, may it get the money, may it get. So when I got sober and I had to calm down, easy does it, those little sayings, it was like, no, I got to hurry up and get better. I got to catch up. I got to go back to school. I got to figure it out because my mind is racing because it's still in charge. And you said something, you're fractured, your brain. I had such a hurt mind. I was hurt, you know, my mind powered disease, it functions in my head, was telling me that everybody was going to hurt me again. Nothing is trustworthy. And this is how my disease operates. It keeps me in trauma. So I go out and get more. Its goal is to destroy me. So when an addict gets sober, it's not just taking the drugs out of you. That's just the beginning. Now it's let's go back and uncover and discover and discard the things that no longer serve you.
And to deal with those painful emotions and the pain that, you push down that your mother inflicted upon you, which gets me to my question about how you were able to find peace in that situation.
Well, when I first got sober, I worked at this drug rehab, and it was when John Bradshaw oversaw it, and there was a therapist there named Paul Tobias who passed. Um, he said to me, "We're going around the room," and he was saying, "We're talking about suicide." And I'm 24 years old, 23 years old, working at this hospital. And he got to me in this group and he said, "What about you, Hilary?" And I said, "Oh, this isn't my group. This is for the kids." And he goes, "I want to hear about you. Have you ever thought about suicide?" And I said, "Yes, I thought about it last night." And but for the grace of God, here's another little one of my angels. At the end of the group, he said, "Listen, come have therapy with me." And I said, "I can't afford it." And he goes, "Don't worry. You just pay me what you can." And that started me on this journey of first, I started trusting men again because he was a man and he wasn't trying to sleep with me or take advantage of me. He just wanted to help me. So it slowly allowed me to start trusting people. And he encouraged me to get to know Hilary. He used to say things like, "You have no idea how powerful you are." And I thought, no, I'm not. I'm weak because my mind was telling me I was not enough. And so that was the beginning of me having the courage to look inside of me to find out that a lot of my principles, the truths I was living by, weren't mine. They were my mother's. So when my mother said, you'll never get anywhere. That was how she felt about herself. You're not enough. That's how she felt about herself. Because, I mean, we project everything from our movie comes here. How I feel, I'm projecting. So if you want to know how you're doing, look at your life. If your life is falling apart, you're falling apart inside. And so he was kind enough to encourage me to take little bits, and he helped me. I was with him for 20 years. So I've been through therapy. I've been to grief recovery workshops. I've done everything. I've stayed so thirsty to feel better so I don't get thirsty to drink.
Mm. And tell me about the book.
I wrote my memoir, which when my mother died, it was jarring on me because I thought I still had so much anger and resentment. I hated this woman. But I knew that if I didn't get rid of my anger, my resentment, I was not going to stay sober. So 24 years ago, I had a sponsor that said to me, a mentor that said to me, until you identify with your mom, you're going to keep bringing all your pain back into your life. And I couldn't figure that out. So I wrote this inventory about all the stuff my mother had done to me. But then on the other side, I had to write the character I became and how I retaliated. So who was I in response to who she was? And so I started looking at, I caused her pain. I caused her grief. I hurt her. I broke her arm. I stole from her. Like I had to look at who I was. And I kept blaming her. I kept saying, it's because of you. It's because of you. When you hurt, you want to make everybody else. I wanted to make it all your fault so I don't have to take responsibility. So he had me look at the character I had built as a result of the trauma I had gone through. So I wrote this long inventory. She had passed, and I thought all the pain would go away, but I was still furious. I hated this woman. And I put her ashes at the beach near me. I always said, you got to keep your enemies close. And in California, you have to go underneath Pacific Coast Highway to get to the other side to the ocean. And my mother's ashes were there. So I went down there and I read this inventory to my mom and God. And I said, Mom, I know you never wanted to hurt me. Mothers don't want to hurt their children, but you had mental illness like I do. You suffered from alcoholism like I do. So now all of a sudden, bad guy, bad girl, I started right sizing myself. All of a sudden I could see her face to face, and I gained empathy for this woman. Like, poor thing, she was tortured. And she tortured me because she was tortured. Hurt people, hurt people. And then I started looking at what are the good things? I say the pony and the horse shit here. What are the good things I got out of all this pain?
The good things out of suffering. We talk about that a lot on this podcast. And I think suffering does, if you allow it, now not everybody allows it, it makes you more human. And it also has certain gifts. Of course, the suffering of losing somebody. I mean, I would take that person back. I'd take my daughter back in a second. But the suffering has taught me so much.
So much. My mother, she gave me resilience. She gave me a personality. I'm funny. I do stand up. I mean, the pain, I've turned it into pleasure. I've turned it into purpose. And how many women do I get to help? Thank you, Mom. Thank you, Mom. My strife has been such an asset. My being homeless, thank God, I can identify. My judgment is less.
Rather than seeing yourself as a victim of your mother's
I'm a victim.
actions.
Oh my God. Thank you, Mom. So thank you, Mom. Yet, do I miss having a relationship with her? I don't know what it's like to have a mom and dad relationship.
Right. You missed that part. You missed it. A lot of people that don't have a parent who is loving and kind
Right.
and supportive miss that. And you just don't know what it's like.
but I don't miss it because I don't know what I'm missing.
Mhm.
So I have the opportunity to create that. I create it with strangers where I get to care and love without a price tag.
Hilary's latest book about how Hollywood stole her childhood, Good Grief, Hollywood Ate My Childhood, will be out soon. She's also writing another book, and she has 2 others already published. You can find a link on how to get them in the show notes on this podcast. And while you're there, we'd really appreciate it if you just take a moment to rate and review this episode, and please share it with your friends and family. You know someone who could benefit from hearing it. Every share helps spread awareness and reminds people they're not alone in their struggles with mental health and substance use. What is the main message in your book that you want people to take away?
That no matter what you go through, you are not what you've done. That regardless of what happens, hope is just around the corner. And you can reinvent yourself with a thought. That's all I have to do, is I have to allow myself to dream, which, when you're depressed, you stop dreaming. You forget about what's important in life. And I was so depressed. All I wanted to do was die constantly. And I've, through so many people, I've had so many incredible, some of the greatest angels are strangers. And because I allowed myself to have an open mind, I've had so many incredible experiences where complete strangers have guided me to my next indicated step. How lucky am I? And I get to thank them by giving what has been given so freely to me. I get to give it away to somebody else. So I share my joy. In my book, my brother died of AIDS. And I really believe that I was worthless. And through his dying, he showed me how important I was as a human being. And as a result of that, when I made a decision to write this book after my mother passed, I thought I need to share that no matter, because we have this illusion that if you're doing good, this thing is, can be evil or not. Like you can post and everything's great. I'm living in a mask. I'm living in a veneer. It's so unreal that, I was judged as a kid because my life looked good, but, and I placed so many more masks up, and it stopped me from growing. That no matter what you go through, no matter what you see other people, their lives may be perfect, that there's stuff happening underneath. And, regardless of what you go through, you're not what you've done. That's my biggest message.
Is there anything else, any parting words or anything else you want to add before we close out this podcast?
If you're going through a traumatic time, some of the things I do is, if you can stabilize yourself with your seeing, tasting, touching, hearing, smelling, getting to a place where you stabilize. I can't see beyond the forest if I'm still in it, but I have the power to calm myself down. Once I calm that down, I can get into a place where I can feel like I belong somewhere. From there, I can build my esteem. From there, I can be productive. And there, I get to be of service. If by allowing yourself to calm down first, that's when you could start seeing beyond the forest.
And I don't think there's anything more important than being of service.
Oh, yeah. It's the best thing ever, as you know. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it.
I really appreciate you inviting me. Thank you so much.
And thank you for listening to this episode of Grieving Out Loud. Join us next week for a powerful conversation with a sociologist who lost her son to drugs. She blends her personal loss with her professional insight to explore how stigma, inequity, and a lack of compassion in our healthcare and treatment systems can lead to tragedy, and what we can do to change that.
There is stigma in school. right? There and all the institutions that we had. But I think the most insidious is medical care, because from the beginning, Alex was certainly taught to feel like he was just an addict, right? I don't tend to use that term addict because I think it's negative in a way that we don't need to talk about people who suffer.
That's next week on Grieving Out Loud. You can check out hundreds of other episodes of this podcast anytime on our website, emilyshope.charity. Again, you can find a link in the show notes. Thanks for listening. Until next time, wishing you faith, hope, and courage. This podcast is produced by Casey Wonnenberg-King and Kayli Fitz.